one, I would like to call the regular board meeting of February 19th, 2019 to order. Would you please turn your cell phones to vibrate or silent? And at this time, I would like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please do roll call?
Mr. Colwell?
Here.
Mr. Lilly's here. Mr. Roman?
Here.
Liz Smith?
Here.
Mr. Powell is absent. Scott Ruggles?
Here.
And Andrea called in a week ago and said she would be absent.
Correct. Very good. Okay. All right. Looking for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Supervisor, I have one change, a new list of bills dated 2/19/19, and also two announcements for those folks that live in the Wall Lake School District. You're happy to know that you'll have an election in May, and those in Huron Valley will be in November. So I thought maybe we were clear this year on elections, but looks like we're going to be busy. So that's all I have, and I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
Motion for support?
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, which is public comment. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. You'll need to come to the podium to identify yourself. And typically it's on a subject matter that is not on the agenda. Oftentimes we do talk about different things on the agenda when they come up. I found it easier to do. Anyone at this time? With that, moving on to item 6, consent agenda. Mr. Clerk?
Supervisor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as with the correction of the new list of bills.
I have a motion. Looking for support? Support. I have support from Mr. Roman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 7, minutes. Approval of the special board meeting of January 15th, 2019.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the special board meeting on January 15th, 2019.
I have a motion. Looking for support?
Support.
I have support from Ms. Smith. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item 7B, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 15th, 2019. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll support.
We have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. Item 8 is a presentation of which I'm always glad to see these things take place. And Chief Gurka, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you, Board. Welcome, public. This is indeed a special day. We have a swearing in or a taking of the solemn oath of some of our career division firefighters. And I'm going to explain a few things, but I'm going to ask them to come up right now. If I could have Joseph Sediseri and Andrew Sittler come up and stand in front of the group. So, what I wanted to talk about is, as firefighters, we take an oath of office as a solemn promise to defend the Constitution of the United States. And a lot of people don't really understand what that means. Well, what it means is that firefighters fall under the Constitution's Article 6 as members of the executive branch of the government sworn to uphold the public trust. Part of this oath includes faithfully discharging the duties of our office and obeying the laws of our state and township. So it is our duty to the public that we are sworn to place the public above ourselves, which is indeed service above self. So with our two firefighters here, both candidates passed a rigorous Act 78 hiring process, which included written testing and an oral interview. In addition, a full background check and psychological testing was performed on these newly hired career division firefighters. And I just wanted to tell you about some of the traits we looked for was being a team player, somebody who's quick acting and decisive but not impulsive, caring and compassionate but tough-minded when necessary. We stress honesty, reliability, and trustworthiness, a strong helper mentality, the ability to show grace under pressure, and a quick learner with mechanical aptitude, because you have to use a lot of tools and work the fire truck, and it does take some abilities there. So let me tell you a little bit about our new firefighters. We have Mr. Joseph Setaseri standing here. He's a White Lake resident. He possesses a Bachelor of Science degree, actually in building construction and management, which he received from Michigan State University. He graduated from the Livingston County Fire Academy in 2014. He's a firefighter 1 and 2 certified firefighter and a licensed EMT with a basic license rating. He's also been a paid on-call firefighter for White Lake Township for the past 5.5 years. During that time, he became a certified FEO, which is a fire engine operator, and he actually worked part-time shifts for the township, which helped open Station 3 on occasions when he was working. He also owns Great Lake Drafting Services, and he's very good draftsman. He actually already helped the fire department with a special drawing we needed for our new burn permit. So we appreciate that. Our next firefighter, Andrew Sittler, he's also a White Lake resident. He possesses an associate's degree in fire science technology, which he achieved at Schoolcraft College. He also graduated from their fire academy, and that was in 2005. He's also firefighter 1 and 2 certified, and he's a licensed EMT with a basic rating. At this time, he's currently testing to become a paramedic, so he's working on that. He's been a paid on-call firefighter for White Lake Township for the last 3 years. And before he worked for White Lake, he worked for the Portage Fire Department in a part-time capacity for about 1.5 years. And he does have experience in another area, and that's working in real estate. So very shortly, you will take a solemn oath, which is your commitment characterized by deep sincerity under God to your country and community. Keep in mind, our fire department will endure as long as good men and women stand and honor their oath. So with that, I would like to bring up Mr. Clerk to go ahead and give them their official oath.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of firefighter
the duties of the office of firefighter
for the Township of White Lake,
for the Township of White Lake,
County of Oakland,
County of Oakland,
State of Michigan,
State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and just so you know, these new firefighters have already been assigned to a 24-hour shift, and they're going to be working immediately to help our residents and serve our residents. So I'm very excited about welcoming them on as the newest members of the White Lake Township Fire Department. Again, congratulations. Oh, sure, I
Chief
can.
in between, let's do that real quick. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's just. Tomorrow they got included. But after that, so. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Scott and I would like to congratulate you as well.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Both of you again.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, it's always great to add new members to the family here, so to speak. And so, welcome aboard, gentlemen. Okay, item number 9 is a a public hearing that we're going to have, just a brief public hearing. And it's related to our CDBG money, which is our Community Development Block Grant money. As some of you may recall, last fall we programmed for multiple programs that we use this money for to do betterment and improvement, different very worthy items to help the public in some way, shape, or form. And we had to make a decision last fall. We had a youth assistance program that came to us for a number of years, and we did not do anything for them, so we decided to help them out. And of course, we have our Meals on Wheels, the minor home repair, and we also have a roof replacement program that we're going to be doing at the Dublin Senior Center hopefully this year. So those were the programs that we had programmed into the system, and we're only allowed to have 4. There was Haven, which is the battered and abused spouses facility that helps out and does a lot of good for women that they have trouble in their life. We were able to go back and find out a little bit of surplus money from a previous year, and we are now in the processes of reallocating $9,500 towards that cause. I think it's a very worthy cause, and I'm very happy to say that we were able to do that. With that, I am going to take and look for a motion to go into public hearing. A public hearing is open to the public to comment on this. Not necessarily a question and answer period, but if there's any comment that anyone would like to make. If not, it'll be a short public hearing, but nonetheless, we are required to have it. So I'd like to make a motion to go into public hearing.
I'll support that.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. We are now in public hearing. If anyone would care to comment on the CBG Block Grant Program, in particular for the funds to go to Haven, I would like to have you speak up. With that, I make a motion to close public hearing.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. I'm looking to the board to approve the $9,500 to be reallocated to the Hayden. Motion. Mr. Lilly?
To make a motion to approve the reprogramming of the 2017 federal CBDG funds to battered and abused spouses from activity 731227 to activity 730137.
Support that.
I have motion and support by Ms. Smith. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to item 10. We have a 10A, which is a resolution for a partial transfer of commercial rehabilitation exemption certificate for Four Corners Square. Four Corners Square is a project that you all know is going up at the corner of Cooley Lake Road and Union Lake Road. Initially, when that project came before the township, we went through what's called a PA 210, which was an incentive offered by the state, county, and the township to help offset some of the costs and the rehabilitation of that. Under the statute, if there is a change in entities, there's not a change in ownership, but it's just a change in how the entities are structured, they have to come before us as a formality to let us know they're doing it so that they can continue to have that particular exemption. Any questions from the board? Nope. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 19-003, which would be a partial transfer of the commercial rehabilitation exemption certificate.
I have motion, look for support.
Support.
Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. 10B, Resolution 19004. As some of you may or may not know about our FOIA law. FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act here that we have, and it's in particular here in the state of Michigan. Recently, last November, October, I can't remember when it was, somewhere around there, there was a request from a entity called only Emily. That's it. For every ballot cast in the state of Michigan in the 2016 election. That is a little out of control. The information's good, but that's a little out of control. I won't personally comment on what I think of that, but nonetheless, I think it was out of control and a burden on all communities that were involved in it. So, recent legislation came through to amend some of those requirements, and this resolution that we're taking is just an agreement that the township will also abide by those amendments under the state law. There are a number of them. Number one, the first and foremost is that Emily cannot apply for a FOIA. Emily has to give us, it's Emily Smith, I live at 1234 Main Street, Anytown, USA, and my zip code is such. And so we now have to have an actual real person or entity that we can go to. We also have a time period of which we can hang on to the request and dismiss the request. Before it was very open-ended and caused a lot of problematic for a lot of communities. So that's what this resolution is about. It's an improvement of a law that was put in place to be beneficial for people to get information that somehow became skewed. So this will help solve some of that problem. Any questions from the board? Okay. Mr. Roman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 19-004, which would approve the FOIA procedures and guidelines as written.
I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. New business. Item 11A, bids for infrared radiant tube heaters for fire station number 2 apparatus bay. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and Board. I'm here before the Board for requests to upgrade the heating system in our apparatus bays at Fire Station 2. We have heating units that are over 30 years old. They're suspended furnaces. They're very inefficient. We've been spending quite a bit of money over the last, several decades to keep that area heated. We did some research and found out, as in other stations, radiant heat is a more economical way to heat that space. It'll be much more efficient. It'll save us money in the long run. There's also a rebate available at this time of $1,200, and we expect a 60% fuel cost reduction for natural gas. So I did obtain 3 quotes. I'm actually recommending we go with the higher bidder because that bidder actually is providing the proper number of heating units for that space. That bidder was the only one who did all the proper calculations for that space. That bidder is also including all electrical work as part of the quote. Some of the other bidders would quote us infrared heaters with less BTU ratings, or else the electrical work wasn't included. So I'm recommending Energy Solutions Enterprises, and they are a local White Lake business.
Thank you, Chief. Questions from the board?
Yeah,
Mr. Ruggles.
I'd just like to say, I agree with you, Chief. I'm glad to see you picked a White Lake company. So anytime we can, keep the work here in the township, that's great.
Yeah, they're very reputable. They've done work for us before. I fully trust this company to be able to perform this work.
Any other questions from the members? Mr. Lilly, anything? Okay.
I'm all set.
Have you all any questions? Okay. Like to entertain a motion? Mr.
I'll
Lilly?
make a motion to accept the bid from Energy Solutions Enterprises LLC in the amount of $10,745.
I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Chief, I do have a question to ask you, though.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes we'll do an RFQ or a sort. Did they come out and they just looked at the facility and did their calculations based on the facility itself when they came out?
Yeah, I had assigned one of our firefighters to meet with each of these individual companies, have them fully tour the station, and then give us, their recommendations.
Okay, so it's based on the recommendations of each company independently.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, you answered my question.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, you're not going anywhere, chief.
Oh, yeah.
Item 11B, bids for fire station number 2 and 3 parking lot improvements. We had this before the board before last year, and the weather kind of closed in on us, and the bidding season went kind of awry, and we weren't able to get too many people to respond. As a matter of fact, there was some other issues too, but.
That's correct. We actually had 0 bidders due to the end of the season. Nobody wanted to commit to try to finish that job before the snow and the cold came. So we did agree to put that out again in January, which we did. The bidders came back, and you can see we also have the engineering firm Johnson and Anderson involved, as they've been involved with developing the specs. And a recommendation has been made. We did receive the 4 bids, and when everything was analyzed, we did have one bidder that did have a discount for doing both jobs, and they were also a lower price on the job. So they are the low bidder. We did some background investigation, and Birmingham Seal Coat did have very good reviews, very good references. We took a look at their website. J&A made some inquiries through their sources, and we all feel comfortable that this company can perform this job to our satisfaction. Also, in this proposal, there is some additional fees for some oversight by Johnson and Anderson, as far as that this job does get performed to the specs that the township is requiring. So these would be things such as some samples of the concrete that would need to be analyzed, various measurements and things that would be taken during the process, so we don't have to go back and find out something wasn't done to spec. We would have that oversight done by our engineering firm.
So materials, data, compaction, things of that nature. Okay, all right,
That's correct.
understood.
That's what is the material testing, that's what we're referring to?
Yes, that fee is a little bit open-ended, depending on, we may or may not use that full amount.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Lilly?
Chief, are you happy with the total price of the $156,000?
Yes, I am.
And that's gonna come out of the fire building maintenance?
Capital outlay
Okay.
budget, yes.
I do want to bring us, Terry? Terry and I looked at these sites, and, we have an interest to make sure everything is done right. We just want to make sure that everybody took into consideration, of course, the drainage issues, and in particular, all the downspouts that are there will be drained to tile underneath the pavement and then traversed across versus dumping out on the pavement now, so.
Yeah, and I did want to thank the board members that came out. I know Mr. Treasurer, Mr. Supervisor, Mr. Clerk did come out to the fire stations, both 2 and 3. They walked the site. They had some good comments and things to add that actually improved the project, especially related to some of the drainage to prevent some ice forming and potential slip and falls.
Slip and fall, yeah.
So it was all very welcomed, and it made this a better project than it originally was. Thank you.
Mr. Lilly?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the pavement improvements at Fire Station 2 and 3, except J&A recommendations for project cost as follows: $132,445.80 for Birmingham Seal Coat, J&A $6,500 for construction, engineering, administration, and layout, and also $4,000 for material testing as an allowance. Also contingencies in there for $13,244.58. Total contract obligation $156,190.38.
To include staking of the northern property line. At station number 3 in particular.
Did I say 2 and 3?
We try to do that, don't we? Yeah, okay. Terry?
We can do that when we do the layout.
Yeah, when you do a layout, what we'd like to do is establish at both stations just a friendly monument.
Sure.
Just so, because in particular on 3, because there's some oddities back in there and
Okay.
pretty bushy. And it's one of those, well, I think property line could be here, property line could be there. So we just like to straighten that out.
We'll do that when we do the layout.
Great, all right.
At no additional cost, right, Terry?
Sure.
I'll support your motion, Terry.
Motion.
On a contingency.
Yeah, there you go. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Chief.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Next item is 11C. As we move forward with our Civic Center development area, it is exciting to see we're going in the right direction. And with the library going up, that's an exciting addition to that area. And we'll have other things that are going to be happening around there. And one of them that hopefully will be somewhere in that proximity is going to be a new public safety building. We've looked at a couple different companies here to come forth before us and give us some information. Chief Keller and Chief Gurka are going to work collaboratively on this effort, as it is going to be a joint but separate building, so that we can go with scale of economics and land conservancy and try to, do it in a efficient as possible manner and give the township the best possible facility that we can for years and years to come. Some of you may or may not know, I think Terry can correct me, I think this particular building started out as a fire station too, Terry, at one years,
It's a fire station in front at one time.
in what, 1938 or yeah, something like that. But we've gotten a lot of use out of this building. So, needless to say, the evolution of the building, they've outgrown it, and they've outgrown station number 1, and the police department has outgrown their home station here. So with that, I will turn it over to you gentlemen, however you'd like to present.
So I'll just, what we're asking for is, both Redstone and NSA, is for an operational analysis of space allocation, programming, as well as a conceptual architectural design from both groups. I submitted Redstone and the chief.
Made a submittal from NSA.
Right, I don't know, this is unusual, I don't know how you want to handle this situation. We have representative of.
If the representatives would both like to do a brief presentation, if they would like to, they can, or if the board has questions, or if you'd like to, however you'd like to go forward with it, gentlemen.
It's quite honestly, it's up to you. If you want them to just to say a few words, they can. If you have any questions, you can ask them. We can, if you want to.
Yeah, I would like to bring up Mr.
By
Greg
all means.
Mason
Okay.
up here to speak on NSA's behalf. Greg is an architect. He had worked with the township in the past. He had worked with me. You're welcome. On a lot of our space needs, our requirements. So we did a lot of things together back in the past to calculate what would the fire department need for the future. He does still have all that data, and then he was requested to kind of weigh in on our needs now. So
Perfect,
would
yeah.
you like to speak?
Yeah,
please?
sure, thank
Hey,
you.
real quick.
Yes, sir.
Greg, Chiefs, just one thing I was curious about, if you guys can hit on a little bit, is what the final product will be,
Right,
and whether or not it will include any exterior view renderings.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
basically, some of you probably remember me in 2015. We did a pretty in-depth, I was involved in a pretty in-depth needs analysis of many facilities here in White Lake. And this would be kind of a follow-through of that whole process. So I've got a lot of good information from before that we can utilize and build upon moving forward with this project. Personally, I've got over 30 years' experience doing public safety type buildings, police and fire, I put my resume in there and NSA's resume in there so you can kind of look at some of the past projects and whatnot. In terms of this proposal, I believe what we're presenting here is very thorough. It's a in-depth program analysis of both the police and the fire stations, looking at ways to economize, ways to work together, looking at all the site needs. We're going to kind of examine all the security, all the safety issues. It's a pretty thorough programmatic process. Once that program has been developed, then the next stage is the conceptual design, preliminary design, where we developed options. We work with both parties to examine options and concepts and develop a program that is efficient, that is builds for the future, provides for all the space and programmatic needs. And then the deliverables eventually would be a site plan, a rendered site plan, rendered floor plan, rendered building elevations. We would also develop a probable statement of costs, so you'd have an idea of how much the outlay would be to build a facility such as this. So it's a pretty in-depth. We look at codes, we look at all the regulations, and make sure that what we're representing and what we're proposing to you is thorough, and will meet your needs today and tomorrow. And you'll have that deliverable to help sell it to the public. So I hope that answers your question.
Very good. Okay, any questions from the board? Mr. Lilly?
Greg, how far would this cost go as far as the final preliminary or final plans and to develop several concepts of what maybe the exterior of the building would look like?
Yeah, this is
Talking additional costs over and above this.
well. This is what we consider to be more or less a schematic design phase. If the project should move forward and the board agrees with the costs and you're able to secure your funding, then the next phase is the development of the bidding documents, the detailed construction documents that would go out to bidders to bid for the project and actually build from, secure your building permits. So this is step one, but it gives you the definition of the project, which I think is what you're after. Is what is it going to look like? What is it made out of? How much is it going to cost? It gives you that tool to be able to make that decision to go to the next phase.
So there will be some additional costs that we can anticipate before we actually get to the point of construction of a building.
Yeah, absolutely. There would be the bidding phase. Yeah, the construction documents.
Yes, sir.
I have one question for both the chiefs. I notice you only have 2 quotes on here, but have either one of you sat down with either one of the 2 quotes just to find out more about them other than what's been submitted on paper? And I guess the next question would be, are both of you in consensus of who that you want out of these 2 people to hire? Well, I guess two questions.
Well, we can both speak on it.
I've had multiple meetings with Redstone. I would say 4 that prior to this meeting, and I'm not sure if I think we believe who we have is the person who we want. I don't know. I can't speak for you, but I'm here to plug for Redstone, and I'll give my spiel after.
So
this.
who is your recommendation at this?
Mine's going to be Redstone, and I'll explain to you why after when I bring
Okay.
Redstone up.
Yeah, and I did have a couple initial meetings with Redstone. A group of us did. I do want to bring in somebody else to get another opinion, to take a look at cost, what they could do for us. And so, working with somebody that is very familiar with our township, with our facilities, and has a lot of data already, just made sense to bring somebody in that I would trust, on this project. And I think a lot of you know how I feel. Although I understand what some of the benefits could be for a combined facility, I'm still of the mind that, I would like to see a separate freestanding fire station. However, I'm not against, having a combined facility, if it does truly render a cost savings for us. So That's kind of my position and where I'm at.
Thank you, Chief.
Mhm.
Okay, Chief Keller?
Okay, so I've known Daniel Redstone for probably 4 or so years, probably since 2014. Mr. Redstone is very active in the police community. He goes to every single Oakland County Chiefs of Police luncheon that we have, where he discusses concepts and designs with the chiefs that are there. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, went to the Michigan Association Chiefs of Police conference, where there are 400 plus participants of executives in the state of Michigan, where his firm was there, pushing his design ideas and getting information from people and from police chiefs and the police executives. So he's very active in the police and fire community. And he's not just a Michigan. Redstone Architects is not just a Michigan company. They are a nationwide company. I've had conversations with several chiefs, including from Battle Creek, where I'm on the accreditation board for MACP. I'm on the board with them. I've discussed it with him. I've discussed it with Chief Malloy from Novi, from Milford, from West Bloomfield, from Troy, who've all had designs from Redstone. So I am extremely comfortable with knowing Dan and knowing his company and knowing what he does for both the police and fire community, that he is the right fit for this for the design of this of the new fire public safety building. And I'll let you go ahead and speak if you like.
I don't know if there's anything left to say.
Redstone Architects has over 50 years of experience designing fire stations, police stations. We do design and consult across the country for all the 50 states. So we do have a lot of experience in different municipalities with different types of buildings, because everyone operates a little bit differently, both fire and police. So we take our experience that we've get from all over the country and bring it to our designs.
I have a question. How are they adapting to all the new homeland security issues that we have? Obviously, they're trying to stay on top of all that in architecture, and this is probably a question for both firms. I mean, adopting all the new safety standards and
Absolutely.
everything.
Yeah, Dan is very active. He goes to conferences, he goes to seminars to stay up to date. He does a lot of communicating with the law enforcement and the fire communities to make sure that we have all the up-to-date information, the trends, and what is going on and what we can do in the future to protect the safety and welfare of the firefighters and the officers.
Kind of like the same question there, Greg.
Fair enough. We have one of the other players on our team, Brandon Chrisman. His resume's in there as well, is getting his master's in security for design and implementation of security for buildings and facilities. So he's very up to speed on all of the latest criteria and governing what's good for design for public safety and security measures.
Greg, could you mention some of the fire department facilities that you've worked on?
Sterling Heights, Rochester, Rochester Hills. I've worked at Hamburg, North Oakland County Fire Authority. I've done 3 stations with them. Fort Gratiot. I've done over 40 fire station type projects in public safety buildings. Lapeer Public Safety, that's a combined facility. That project's in our proposal. I've done the State Police Post in Flint, done several sheriff offices. I worked on the Genesee County Jail. I worked on the Genesee County Courthouse. Pretty well versed in the both arenas, personally.
Very good. And can you elaborate on the projects in the area or
Sure.
even
Right now,
regionally?
right now we're doing the Monroe Fire Station. We just finished up the Troy Fire Station. We just conducted a study for the city of Lincoln Park for their police and court facility, a combined facility. And let's see, we've done consulting for police facility in Warrington. We're working on that one right now. We've just finished up a public safety building in North Carolina. We did a police and court in South Carolina, so a lot of public safety, not just fire and police, but a combination of fire, police, and court, all of those combined.
Questions to the board members? Mr. Lilly?
Quite honestly, I hope to come to the meeting tonight and had a recommendation of both the chiefs, clear direction of picking one of the two companies, and I'm not comfortable at this particular point of kind of hiring one to do one and one the other job at this point. But I would, however, be interested into hearing more from both companies, particularly in a point of maybe a little more visual of what they're going to do for us, as well as their recommendations as far as either a joint facility or separate facilities. I know in our discussions that we've talked several times about areas of both police and fire that are potential cost savings to the taxpayers of the community. I'm not really convinced myself that separate facilities are ideal, but I'm willing to listen to aspects of security and those type of things that maybe could be offered. So I'm really, like I say, came to hopefully accept the recommendation of both the chiefs, and don't know if I'm ready to do that at this particular point. So.
Okay, all right. Questions, comments?
Just from Redstone, can you go into briefly what the final product that we'll get from you would include?
Similar to what Greg said, we will do a needs assessment for you to find out what the needs of the fire and the police departments are, and from that thorough needs assessment, talking, interviews, questionnaires, get a really good understanding of the operations of both departments. Then we'll put together in the second part of the conceptual design. It would be the block diagrams, site plan, get a massing to figure out exactly what the space that this building is going to take up, and all the tools that you need to move forward with the community in presenting what we have and what your ideas are for the future.
So it would show where the rooms are, where the desks are, pretty much all that layout. Does it include any exterior renderings, or is that down the road?
Some elevations, we can do some elevations for you.
Okay. Would that be something that you could show the public?
Absolutely, yeah.
It'll be important that we have something, because obviously we want the public's take on it at some point when we start to move into the final design stages of the particular product. Okay, well, this is kind of interesting. Yes, Ms. Smith.
So I feel at an impasse here. We have a divided house. I know one chief has strong feelings to have a separate building, and one chief perhaps is indifferent, and you're each rooting for your own bid here. I'm also uncomfortable with the process because after speaking with Clerk Lilly, I believe we have to have 3 bids, so we're not following our own
We're not required to have 3 bids.
procedure, and these bids did not come through the clerk's office, so I'm uncomfortable with the process. I just want that noted, that we're not following our own rules. So at the moment, I need more information to make this decision.
Okay. Mr. Royals, any comment?
Oh, I feel the same way as Liz, yeah. I'd like a little more information.
Very good. Well, it looks as though we may have an impasse, okay, at this moment in time.
I don't think we need to make a decision today, do we?
Not
No.
essential, it's not essential. I mean, I would like to move the process along, but it's not essential. We can postpone this for a further meeting.
Yeah, I want to be clear that I'm all for the public safety building. I support that. I'm just not comfortable yet in making that decision this evening.
2 reputable firms. I would like more time to speak with both chiefs, so.
Right.
I feel the same way. They're both very, very reputable, and we've dealt with Greg before. This other firm seems very reasonable, and I think we can all learn a little bit by having another discussion, whether we have a special meeting, invite both of them different times to put on a presentation for us.
Which may be something we will do, okay, which, as a matter of fact, I will pretty well guarantee you we'll do that, because then it'll just be the primary topic. So, with that, I'm looking for a motion to postpone.
Make a motion to postpone.
We'll support that.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Postpone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming
Thanks,
tonight.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Can we postpone indefinitely, right? That's okay?
Postpone is till, we'll set a date, a
Okay.
future date.
Mr. Supervisor, one
Yes.
thing, and we've had our discussions before, and I think it's imperative that, in my opinion, that we started the ball rolling on our Civic Center, and one thing I'd really like to see us proceed with these plans, so we got some idea what to tell possibly our future partners or what direction we're gonna go in. So I would like to, hopefully within the next month,
You and I
get
are
a
gonna be,
meeting so that we
you and I are
can,
gonna be talking about that
get moving.
this week, so that's on the agenda,
So if I can kind
our
of
agenda. Yes,
piggyback off of that, I think that's what's needed here is a more hearty discussion from our board of what direction we want to go here. Then we kind of know what we're looking for. We kind of missed some conversation and communication, I think.
well, this is why it's been introduced by the chiefs, to see what their thought processes are and what direction they want to go in. They've brought two very reputable firms forward.
Which
and,
makes the decision harder.
Makes the decision harder, and there isn't that much of a difference in the cost on the type of product. It's just which company has the area of expertise that's going to suit us the best. And that will be determined through further conversations. We'll go from there. Okay, moving on, we are at item 11D, request to transfer funds from general fund improvement to revolving fund. Mr. Roman.
So, as we all know, we've purchased property for a future township development. Gosh, the way I grew up, my parents taught me if you could save a little bit of everything you bring in, you just put yourself in a much better position for the future. That said, our general fund generated in excess of $100,000 over what I budgeted for investment income in 2018. I just had a good year. Interest rates worked for us. And I'm requesting permission from the board to transfer that $100,000 from the general fund into the improvement revolving fund to help fund any future township improvements.
Very good. Any questions from the board?
Questions?
No, great job, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you.
Yes, well, we had some discussion at length and felt that it would be a good step to go in that direction. Whatever you want.
Mike, did you form that, a motion?
I will put that in the form of a motion.
Okay.
I'll support that.
Okay. Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will transfer.
Thank you.
My
Thank you,
comment-
board.
And my comment on that is that we're trying to think for tomorrow. So it's better to put a little bit away whenever we can. So at this moment in time, I think that's pretty good. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Item 11E, request for library landscape bond waiver. And essentially, there's also another item that I think you also wanted to address, which was also the water bond, surety bond for the water. And that would be, this type of bond is not a bond that's for sale, so nobody go there. This is a bond that is put up whenever a project is performed that assures that the workmanship, it's sort of like a warranty or a guarantee. Whenever there's underground work done, whenever there's landscaping and a variety of other activities that take place in the township, sidewalks, the list goes on and on. The township requires a bond up to 125% of the cost of whatever that particular task is for completion to be done. That money needs to be, set aside, so to speak, so that not only is the job done, but there's a warranty on it. In this particular case, for the plants to make sure the plants and the landscaping lives for a period of 2 years. In this case with the water system, it's to make sure that in the next 2 years that something doesn't blow up in that water system. And it's the only warranty that the township actually has against any claim of fault or act of God or who knows what could ever happen underground. And in the water system, we have 2 Elizabeth Lake Road crossings and excess of 1,000, Mr. Potter? Couple thousand feet of pipe, water main. So not that there is anticipated to be an issue, but it's always the what if scenario. And we don't always know what Mother Nature or any other thing that could possibly happen. So the library is requesting to have those, what, they want them waived in their entirety, or they're gonna put a?
So I can just give a brief synopsis. The library board president requested to Supervisor Colwell and myself to be on the agenda, and for this reason. Per zoning ordinance 58, and I forwarded this all to the board members. Per zoning ordinance 58, the library is responsible for submitting a cash bond equal to 125% of the cost of landscaping, which is $88,218 for 2 years as part of the process to receive a certificate of occupancy. We are requesting a waiver of this requirement, and in its place, we passed a motion in our November 2018 meeting to maintain a fund balance to cover this amount. I have attached a copy of the minutes reflecting this motion as further support. The library fund balance minimum target is in the $300,000 range, which is approximately 350% of the landscape budget. We look forward to a favorable response after your February meeting. Sincerely, Glenn Roscoe, Library Board President.
I have a question, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes.
Do we have a signed contract with the library?
We have
We have an
an
agreement.
agreement.
What does it say about bonds?
Oh, here, you wanna pass that over, Scott?
Let's see here. I'm sure the library has a copy of this too. Let's see. On page 3. The library shall require the contractor or contractors for the construction of any part of the project to furnish all necessary bonds guaranteeing performance, and all labor and materials bonds, and all owners' protective, workers' compensation, and liability insurance required for the protection of the library in the township. All bonds and insurance and the amounts therefore shall be subject to the approval of the library and shall include White Lake Township as an additional insured. All such insurance shall be made effective from the commencement of construction of the project. So this here is signed by the president of the library. So I think that spells out how the bonds work.
Is there any reason that the contractors are not providing bonds?
No, we have, all the contractors have.
I'm not able to
bonds.
speak to this. My only part in this is they requested just me to
Okay.
help facilitate this to get onto our agenda.
This is something different than the workmanship bonds that we have already paid for, and we're actually paying for an umbrella policy as well, which Terry should be pretty familiar with.
Denise, does the performance bond for the water system, does that carry out a number of years, do you know?
2 years?
No, I'm asking the performance bond that you've got from your
Oh.
contractor, because if it carries out 2 years, you know, we're covered, then great, I think you're all set.
I cannot answer that.
Yeah.
Mr. Potter, can you clarify, in particular, the water bond? I have a greater concern over that than anything else.
Yeah, so you're correct. The maintenance bond required for acceptance of water and sewer systems. It's spelled out in the township ordinance. And that would be Ordinance 38 108 and 38 482. Said to be equal to 50% of the value of the system, and essentially that does warrant the system against defects in design, materials, and workmanship for a period of 2 years from the date that the system enters into service, which would be in the water, spells out the date that the meter is set as the acceptance date.
Has the meter been set to this date, or?
No, it has not.
It has not, okay.
Working on these closeout documents that are required, so this is all required to kind of happen at the same time. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be to the exact date, but
This is typical of any project that we do throughout the township?
this is a requirement per acceptance of water and sewer, spelled out in the township ordinance. It's also included in the engineering and design standards that developers use throughout their planning process, as well as spelled out in the pre-con minutes. At that time, we give them, and was included in the pre-con minutes, the forms that they would use for, you know, all the required acceptance documents, easements, bill of sale, maintenance bond, suggested language, contractors' affidavits, grading certificates. All of that stuff was provided to them at the time of pre-con.
Okay, so there's obviously knowledge to the contractor of the requirement of these particular bonds.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Rum?
I was just gonna ask, council, any thoughts, concerns on
Well-
this topic of waiving, the requirement?
There's a couple things that I'm not necessarily clear on. Apparently the request referred to a cash bond, but I'm not sure that that section of the ordinance requires a cash bond.
It does not. It can be cash or surety.
Yeah, so, you know, typical is a performance bond by a surety posted. It's certainly typical of any public improvement project and/or the requirements of the landscaping as well. The problem is if you start waiving these requirements, that it has an unintended consequence of other projects, commercial or otherwise, where you seek then to impose that requirement. Then it creates selective enforcement or equal protection problems.
Mr. Supervisor, if we may, can we just, there were two separate requests, I think, can we back up and just deal with the landscape waiver and then
Well, I don't have a
the
problem.
water?
Yeah, I don't have a problem addressing those at all, you know, either way, so.
Okay, just for clarity
The
for
one
minutes.
the one that's out there now is, that came before us first, we'll say, is the landscape request. So that, I believe, would be, I think it's the around $88,000 is the contract for the landscape, something like that. So 125% of that would be $110,000 for a surety bond.
Yeah, 88,218 is the number I was given,
Right.
so.
So that times 125% would give you the actual amount of the bond.
I think it's the total amount right now.
That, I think that is the 125%.
Do you have a copy of the landscape contract with you?
I do not, but that's the number we got from Sean, so Sean,
Okay. I would, yeah, unless, yeah, I'd like to see some document, I don't have any documentation, so without that documentation, I can't. Not that I distrust anybody, but we don't have those numbers in front of us, so these could be the wrong numbers. So, council, your thoughts on this particular one in particular? Is it the same as?
Well, I'm looking, I don't know what the conditions of the bonds are, but, you know, it's typical to require a landscape bond for replacement of landscaping that may die within the first 2 years. It's not unusual. I have the same issue with any particular performance bond, where it is required and you are selectively waiving those requirements. Not to cross issues here, but take, for instance, the water maintenance bond, that section 38108 does not provide for any exception to that bond. There's no provision to waive it, as far as I can tell, in the ordinance itself. So that creates potentially some legal issues.
Very good, okay.
I would like,
Just a reminder, this is between two governmental entities, it's not private.
I understand that, but the ordinance is the ordinance.
Right, I
Okay.
understand that as well, but,
Yeah.
but the one comment about having precedent or whatever, I'm not sure that that's.
I have to rely on counsel. Mr. Potter?
I would just like to say that, we do have other developments, that do have bonds with us right now for, that do have 2-year maintenance bonds with us. One of those developments, I'm not gonna name names, but we will be most likely, going after that bond. And we've asked, Foster and Swift to, write an intention letter to that developer to that effect.
So it does happen.
So it does happen.
Okay.
So I think it's my understanding, and I'd look for a little clarity on this. They're basically just asking to put up their fund balance as collateral instead. How does that
I don't know why they
itself
just,
out?
why wouldn't you get a surety bond? It'd probably be cheaper.
I can't answer that. I got the same email you did, Rick, so I mean, I just have that information to go on. I would hope that someone from the library board would have been here to speak on it, honestly, but I just wanna know from council, is that allowable? Cause that's my understanding of their intent, that they, and correct me if I'm wrong, Denise, that they would like to put their, like, collateral up.
So typically, when we refer to bonds, there are a number of ways that those take effect, right? So generally speaking, we have cash bonds, which are preferred because they're cash, irrevocable letter of credit from a bank or financial institution, which are probably the second most preferred, and then a surety bond, which is the least preferred, but which is likely the most common because it's cheaper, usually easier to get. None of those, in any of the instances, and I've been involved with hundreds of performance bonds, none of those would we ever allow the entity to keep those funds rather than depositing those, either the surety bond, the irrevocable letter of credit, or cash bond. Leave that with the entity who's required. The reason for that is because, particularly if you're talking about a cash bond, it makes it very difficult to draw upon that bond if the owner of those funds says, I'm not paying it. So if you have a cash bond, say, on deposit here at the township, it's easy enough to say, you haven't done this, we're drawing on the cash bond to pay for these replacements of landscaping, which is required per site plan review and approval. Similarly, irrevocable letter of credit, you draft what's called a draft order to a financial institution saying they haven't met the conditions of the performance that was required of them pursuant to that site plan approval. We're drawing on this bond with the bank, and the bank pays it over to the township. The more difficult one, always the more difficult one, is the surety bond, because a surety bond is issued by an insurance company, and you often have delays and you need to submit extra documentation to them. It's like collecting on a claim for your insurance company. It's always more difficult than if you had the other two. But in not a single instance would I ever recommend that cash be kept with the entity who's responsible for the performance.
Thank you for your explanation. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Roman?
Yeah, so, well over a year ago, it took 7 drafts to come up with an agreement that both the township could live with and the library could live with. So we signed the agreement, the library signed the agreement. My advice is to follow the agreement. The agreement says that the library is going to follow all the rules. They got to come up with the money for the bonds. We both agreed, it's in writing. Just thinking out loud, if the library's going to earmark money anyway, it'll go into trust and agency here. That money cannot be touched. It sits in trust and agency unless, of course, there's a claim. I don't know what the likelihood is, of a client, but, guys, that's where I'm coming, that's why we have the agreement, to avoid these kinds of issues.
Counsel, if the cash was taken from the library account and placed in our trust and agency, would indeed it meet the intention of the ordinance?
Yes.
Are you talking about the construction fund, Rick?
No, I
Which-
just,
Okay, I wasn't sure.
library money, period, okay?
Coming from, okay.
Correct, because my question here is a technical one from a bond issue, of which you may or may not have this answer. Seeing as it is a bond that was for the construction of the library and for that intent, if they were to take funds from their construction account and put them in the trust and agency, can they legally do that from that bond money? Or is that a gray area?
No, well, I probably would want a definitive answer from your bond counsel, but the way I read the agreement, the bond proceeds were intended to cover all costs of the construction, including the bonds.
Correct.
So from that perspective, the library could deposit with the township a cash bond and meet the requirements of your ordinance with respect to the maintenance bond, say, for the water system, or landscaping replacement.
As long as it would meet the intent of the ordinance, that's my concern.
Correct, and I presume after 2 years, provided you don't have to draw upon the bond, that money is returned after that 2-year period.
To the library fund. Well, there's your answer.
And the answer?
Come up with the cash and you're gonna be good. So,
So you can take it out of the construction fund?
I heard that, yes.
okay. So I guess
All
it's
we
real,
could do is
it's really up to the
Or we could do a
library.
surety bond.
Up to the library how to proceed. Okay. Any other yes, Mr. Lilly.
I just think the least painful may be for the library to go back to their contractors and see if these contractors, if they believe enough in their work and credible that they should be posting a bond with the library anyway.
Hey, you may already be covered, and if you need to
Already
check.
covered under the bond.
Yeah, we need to look into that and verify.
That would be the least painful, but the other one would be letter of credit or a bond or to take the money from the bond proceeds.
Put it in trust and agency. Okay. All right. Well,
I agree with our legal counsel's explanations.
The least painful, you'd have to match up the cost, right? I mean, you could deposit a cash bond with the township and not incur the cost of a performance bond, but you have an opportunity cost, which may be interest on that money over a 2-year period.
probably won't be much.
Probably not at the rate that you can get.
If you give it to Mike.
Give it to Mike, yeah.
to Mike, it's those trips to the
That's
casino.
what I did with mine.
All right, then Denise, do you have satisfactory explanation?
I understand.
So do we now need, would you like to now separately address the water, or we?
It's gonna be
It's kinda
a carbon
redundant.
copy, yes.
Yeah.
It's carbon copy, so, okay Denise, I just want to make sure that
I understand.
you know what you need to go forward with. Okay, very good. Okay, moving on to item number 12. Item number 12 is basically an FYI. Things get more interesting all the time. We had recently been contacted by GFL, and we are in, Terry, what, you're 2 and a half?
2 years left.
We have 2 years left, 2 years left on our contract with them that we have. And of course, GFL is our trash hauler and our recycling contractor. There's been an interesting change in the marketplace due to the U.S.-Chinese differences that we're having right now and a variety of other things. And one of them I found out is even the internet had something to do with it. And I found this out from another source, that the price of the recycled goods is coming down. And what's happened is that it's now costing more to handle them than it is to recycle them. So we've been approached by GFL to do one of two things. in order to, in their eyes, to maintain the cost of our current trash contract, would be to take the recyclables that we use and repurpose them for a energy reclamation, incineration. So essentially what they do is they take anything that you would put in the recycling bin, take it down to the large Wayne County, Detroit Wayne County incinerator that creates electricity, and they would burn it in that incinerator, okay? Which I guess is a way of recycling, but it kind of defeats the purpose of what most people think of recycling. Recycling to me is you take a milk carton and it becomes a play structure out in the schoolyard or somewhere in the community someplace, or becomes part of a new manhole assembly that we've started to use, which is out of recycled materials. So they came before us and they're requesting that we make an adjustment of $1 to maintain an actual recycling program. It would cost an additional $1.28 per week per
Month.
per month. I'm sorry, thank you. $1.28 per month per.
Per parcel,
Thank you. And I think we have like 90-some hundred.
99.78.
99.78. Thank you. So that's a cool $152,000 a year.
153.
$153,000.
Okay. All right.
About $15 a house.
About $15 a house.
Per year.
So now we have to have the ecological conscience of the public out there, and I'm appealing to the public not appealing to you, Bob. I'm appealing to the public, with exception of Bob.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, to get your take on it. You know, we have our township website, we have our Facebook. We'd like to hear from the people in the public what they think. Would it be worth you to spend a little bit more to know that your goods are going to be recycled, or would you be satisfied with them going to the energy repurposing? What do they call that? What's renewable energy use?
About 200 buildings in Detroit and air conditions them in the summer.
Okay, so they
To energy.
okay.
It's steam.
Okay, so they create steam, and that's used for heating and cooling in the Detroit metropolitan area. Okay. If you've ever been down there for a concert at night in the wintertime, you see all the steam floating up out of the holes. That all comes ultimately from that plant. So it's just kind of an interesting question that we would like to pose to the public, and we'd like you to weigh in on it and see what you have to say. And I'd like to hear what the board members have to say. Mr. Ruggles?
Yeah, I have a question. So, I assume you guys are with GFL?
That's correct.
Could you identify yourselves, please? It's a little easier when you're at the podium.
Yes,
Yeah. Ken, did she tell you she ordered that microphone?
I got it.
Oh, why isn't it working?
Thank you, Supervisor and It is a unique connector.
Okay.
And board members. I'm Mary Jo Van Adder. I'm with GFL, and this is
Don Beretta with GFL too.
so part of the process, though, I want to back you up just a bit, is it's very contaminated. So the material today went to a single stream where you could put everything in it. Well, today people are thinking they're doing such a great job, but they're putting everything in it. And that's part of the cost, why the cost went up so much to process it. So that $1.28 is an increase in the processing costs just to bring it to zero, okay? So by taking it to the incinerator, there will be no cost to the residents. And that's something I want to be clear about. Will the markets change? Yes. It's cyclical, always. Commodities go up and down. But right now, the value of the materials and the processing costs exceed it so greatly. So that's why we're here today. We just have, we have no other alternative, actually. And Don is our operations director for the whole company here in Southeast Michigan. So Don knows it also.
The other problem we have is,
Don, can you come over to the microphone? The folks on the television won't be able to hear you.
the other problem we have is the contamination is huge right now. I I was partners with Mike Sapo down at Rossock a few years ago. So we knew, you know, at that time, we knew that the contamination rate was under 8% at that time. Now it's pushing way over 25%. The other problem we have is there are no MRFs anymore in the area. There are 2. There used to be 3. The one in Roseville closed down when Recommunity sold to Republic.
John, what do you mean by contamination? Can you explain what you mean?
That is the amount of material that can't be processed anywhere.
Is it because people don't wash their containers out?
No, it's more about diapers, hoses.
It's everything.
Oh,
It's
the wrong
hoses,
items
it's
being
ba-
put in the...
It's baggies that are not recyclable. So what happened was people got so overzealous about recycling that everything goes in there.
Like my wife. Okay.
And like shredded paper, okay?
Well
And
intended.
bags of recycling. So when you bag recycling, they just pull it off. It goes as residual or trash. It doesn't get recycled. They don't rip into the bags, okay? Also, like a real major contaminant is plastic bags that you get at Kroger and CVS. Those are not being captured anymore. So, generally, so they have to slow down the MRFs, the machines, the processing plants, and able to get a cleaner product come out, okay? And so with that comes an increased cost, and that's pretty much...
The slower the line, the more people they have to separate everything, and the residual keeps getting higher and higher. And the other problem is there are only 2 MRFs in the area right now.
So they get...
We have limited capacity, and there are days when we can't dump our recycling trucks at the end of the day. We have to wait until the morning when they're able to process additional product through the evening, and we can dump in there, which pushes us back all the time. So it's two prongs: limited capacity, not enough MRFs. Well, there is a third one, but it's Sakra, and it only services the 12 communities down over in the Troy, Royal Oak area. So it's really hard for us to get everything picked up and processed through on a daily basis, and it puts us behind us, so we have some late evenings. But the contamination is huge. And now you folks only use the 18-gallon bins. A lot of communities have went to the larger 65-gallon recycling carts, which just increases the contamination because it's incredible what they'll put in there. So those are the main reasons that Mary Jo and I would love to be here talking to you about something else rather than this.
I can appreciate what you're telling us, but it seems to me that we need to educate the public. It seemed to me that if there was some sort of concerted effort on the township's part, on your part, to try to alleviate this problem by educating people what they can and what they can't recycle. And though they're well intended, it's having some ill effect on the chain process, which is evident because that's why you're here.
Most communities, they'll have some type of either a solid waste committee or recycling committee that helps us get the word out to everybody. Unfortunately, in White Lake, I think you're at about 6 pounds per home per week for recyclables if you look at everybody. And you all know that not everybody recycles every week, which is a little bit on the low side. But on some of the other communities where they get inundated with information all the time, it helps a little bit, but it still hasn't solved the problem. And one other thing that our company has looked at is that if the market swings back the other way, we do not have a problem with sharing in that, if that happens. So we could come up with some type of sharing program if the recycling, if everything swings the other way, where we get to a position that we were just a few years ago, where there is some residual value.
Sorry.
Mr. Ruggles.
So if we do this, will these 2 plants be able to continue to keep up with the recycling, you think?
Yes.
They will.
Good question, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, they will, and like I said, there are going to be days, there'll be more days probably that we're not going to be able to dump at night, but we always can get back in the morning. And we run one of the transfer stations that we can take recyclables there and then process it through at a later date. We do have some capacity to do that.
So, but one of my thoughts though is that, you know, I know people are willing to pay for trash, but when it comes to recycling, for some reason, the mindset was always that, and that's my background, that there was money to be made in recycling. And it was that way in 2008, but it's changed. The markets have changed. People are not reading newspapers. So when the value was high, it was 47% of what you put in that bin was newspaper. So newspaper goes back into many cycles, and it had a lot of value, toilet tissue, hand towels. Whereas today, people are not, and this is only in a 10-year time frame, and I know it very well, or really 20. It's 2000 we started recycling single stream. But so there's no newspaper going back in there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so the value of the material, corrugated's maybe about 10% of the load. And it's low still. I mean, we don't even ship it to China right now. China, and so the market is very low for that. So there's really, it's going to be a tough one to get the value back up, truthfully, in my opinion. So you either have to want to recycle as a community and pay for it, or you can understand that energy is going to be the green, now that everybody's talking about the green energy or whatever, the green ways of going around. So that's creating 100% of it will create energy. So there's two ways of looking at it. If you want it to go back to its original component, milk jugs go back to milk jugs. Laundry detergent goes back into that cycle. Those do get recycled, but it's a very small percentage of the load, and they're light. So understand that, Glass does not get recycled. Glass, much as you'd like to think it does, it's very contaminated, and it goes to the landfill, and it lines the landfills. So, that's the truth of it.
I didn't know that.
So,
Well, neither did I. I mean, I'm getting an education myself right here. I didn't mean to speak up, but these are things that, our community would like to know. And,
Well, we don't own the MRFs, okay?
Right.
So we bring it to them, and they are the processor. That's what their expertise was. Community owned them, and then Republic recently bought that as an acquisition all across the country. They bought probably 40 MRFs with the acquisition. So, we're kind of at their mercy.
I think we need to do something here. I think we need to come up with a way to educate the public, get them a little more in the know as to what's going on, and also to do the right thing. I think that most of the people that I've spoken with regarding this matter didn't really have a problem paying a little extra, at least the folks that I spoke with, and knowing that it was actually going to be recycled. But you bring up a very good point. Now, if it doesn't make sense to throw your glass away anymore, or if the glass,
Eliminate it, exactly.
if it serves a positive purpose in lining a landfill, if there's a positive purpose for it,
There is.
then I guess it's okay to continue recycling the glass for that positive purpose, okay?
Exactly.
It's just a question of us educating the public because, here I am, I'm over there throwing every little piece of plastic away, and my wife just texted me, and she's watching right now, and she goes, tell them I bring my recycling home from the cottage, okay, which she does. It rattles around the back of my truck half the time.
Well,
So
good.
she tries to do her part, as so many of our residents do, and we live in a very environmentally sensitive area. We've got a lot of lakes. We draw our groundwater, our water, is a ground. Thank you. Our drinking water is a groundwater system. Thanks, Eric. And so it's important for us here to do what we can to try to keep it clean one way or the other. And if recycling is a small part of it, that's fine. But I think we need to have an education program to the public, and I would love to work with GFL any way that I can. And I'm sure that if we needed to put together a recycling committee, I'm sure that I could find individuals that would serve on that committee or be willing to serve on that committee to get involved in that, so that when they ask the questions, they'll have the answers.
Right.
So,
Well, great.
know.
We appreciate your time tonight and.
but I do want to let it go out. I do, and in all honesty, I want to ask the public a couple, if they have questions for you. And I know Bobby.
No, she brought up the point where the price would go up or down and fluctuate. If you can just get in to do the fluctuation instead of saying $1.25 a week or whatever times 52, and you can fluctuate it, that's tough to do. That's a big accounting nightmare.
No, we would be
But-
annual. It would be annually reviewed. Okay, so it's $1.28, and we've been absorbing a lot of money on this. Our company, we've been holding off for 1 year
Oh, I
to
can
reach
understand
out to our communities, thinking that the markets were gonna change, okay? So finally, Patrick DeVigi, our owner, and he said, we've got to, this is a group effort here.
Yeah,
you
we
know.
can't bite the bullet anymore.
Yeah, we
That's-
really can't, and we're being very, and as Don said, when the markets improve, maybe in 6 months, maybe this exporting and importing, China usually relies on our fiber, I can tell you that from experience, and our cardboard. And right now, so what happens is, when we're not exporting to them, the price goes down in the United States. We have a glut, we have too much. The mills can't use all the capacity, and so that's what drove the cardboard price down. So it's all about that, and that's a good point. So we would be willing to share that, but we wouldn't be doing it on a monthly basis.
Well, no, that.
Yeah, or on a
Yeah, yeah,
probably an
bookkeeping
annual
nightmare.
basis.
Yeah.
This is a contract that's, like you said, I think we have 2 more years.
I think so, yeah.
So,
Any other questions from the public?
First off, I would not support going to Detroit Renewable Energy for taking that, because they've been fined multiple times for exceeding the pollutants like crazy in the atmosphere in that area there.
That's a well-run Wayne County facility. What are you talking about?
I would not support that kind of effort. I go to your website all the time looking. I'm surprised you say you can't do glass, because your website says you can recycle glass.
well, it's a commodity that we collect, yes. It cannot be, I'll tell you why. There's there's 3 different kinds of glass. When you put it in there, it becomes smashed in the truck and it becomes cullet. So it's all different colors. It's brown, blue, and white. And when it gets to the plant, I work there and I know it. We had an optical sort in 2000 when we opened the first plant, and it cannot be sorted anymore. And so glass, when it's commingled and it's got plastic in it, and ceramics, people put their plates in, cups in, thinking that that's glass. It's not. And it contaminates the load, and it makes it, but by putting it in, separating it out, it isn't going, it was intention to go back into glass cycle, but now that's the only alternative we have because of contamination factor. So there again, when a product gets contaminated, I don't care how you slice it, you gotta have to deal with it. So then they sell it to waste management, whoever owns the landfills, and every night they line the top. And it does break down. It's sand and silica.
Yeah, right.
So if anything should go in the landfill, that's something that will break down.
I want to try to answer as many of the questions of the public while they're here.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, sir. What does the contract say?
Oh, you get to speak up a little bit.
Martin Sherlick, 4050 Orr Road. What does the current contract say? If I recollect correctly, the contract was originally with Republic, correct?
Correct.
Then the contract got bought out. The last time that I remembered, it was a fixed cost. There was no variable cost associated with the contract.
Correct.
So now we're asking for a variable cost now.
They're coming to us because they do have a clause in there if there are any changes that are mutually agreed upon. So they would have to be agreed upon by the township as well as with them. That is the verbiage is in that contract.
So how is it advantageous for us to let them out of the contract?
Well, we're not
Just a
necessarily
comment,
doing
Rick?
that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I talked to Rick and Terry today, and we both agreed we need to sit down and review the contract So
further
before
detail.
reviewing it, it's kind of, I can't answer your question. Yep.
I have a couple
Yes.
noteworthy things when I looked into this as well. So I have an issue with that too, of, I view it as a breach of the contract. I'm not okay in any way of changing the contract right now. Perhaps if we wanted to address this in 2 years when our contract is up for renegotiation. But I'm not okay with, charging, for us absorbing that cost. I also checked into other communities that you serve around us, West Bloomfield, for instance, and that's just worth noting that you aren't charging them $128, or excuse me, $1.28 per parcel, $1.28 per parcel. Then I checked with your competitors like Republic, and they're not requiring this of their residents or townships either. And the well-intended people that are choosing to recycle, they don't want toxic ash into our environment. So this doesn't really sit with me well at all. And I have a big star about what this comes down to is education. So I do agree with Supervisor Cobalt that we need to educate our residents better on how to handle recyclables.
Absolutely.
And the people that are recycling are well-intended. They don't want to create pollution in our community or surrounding community.
Can I answer your first two questions? We're working with West Bloomfield right now.
I talked to the supervisor's office today. They know nothing about this.
Yeah, we're meeting with them here on March 5th for a contract extension. And in that extension, there are things in there that are directly related to recycling.
So we're going to every community that we recycle. In Southeast Michigan, we have 67 communities we serve.
I mean,
every single one has got a different amount, and you know, it's about the volume you put out. You're as a city or a township or a village, right, Don? And it's calculated.
And Republic probably isn't doing anything because they've ran away from most of the stuff that they have. And we didn't buy Republic. Republic wanted out of this market area. And we said, yes, we would be glad to service the communities that they have here. That's how we ended up with White
You
Lake.
assumed our contract, and so our contract, I'm not mutually agreeable to being charged $153,000 more.
Understand.
That's
The whole-
why we came to you.
Yeah, the whole purpose of this tonight was to bring this up, to have this public discussion, to let people know what's going on so that people don't find things out, via
Right, so the best solution
other
here is to
places.
try to properly recycle.
Exactly. I agree, 100%. So I think if we're gonna need to have some time to talk about this, we need to have some feedback from the public. I'd really like the public to reach out to us and tell us what they think, whatever it may be. Hopefully it'll be something I can read here at a meeting. And let us know what you think. And I wanna see how important it truly is to persons in our community to have recycling, because at the end of this contract, there will be a new contract put out to bid. The question is, because of the changes in the marketplace, there may not be that many bidders. And I am not gonna get into the dynamics of the last one, but it was, I believe we were very fortunate to have GFL ultimately be our carrier, so to speak. So, was there, just a couple more minutes, I have couple more questions, go ahead.
Mary Early, 5925 Pine Ridge Court. I do read the newspaper and I do recycle it. And the Oakland Press is now this thick where it used to be that thick. So it takes a lot of newspaper. We all got literature about what to recycle, what's on the approved list and not approved. It obviously needs updating. And the education part of it I think is very important. My sister lives in a community in Ohio where they only recycle every other week. And there's just the two of us, so we don't have a lot, and we only put ours out every other week. So it would save your company money maybe if you only did recycling pickup. If it's only 6 pounds per household.
Yeah, it's around 6.5 pounds per week. Per
And
week.
most of my neighbors don't recycle. So I would think there'd be some cost savings there. And the other question I have is about the $1.28, if the price would go down with the commodity change, but you have to do it by contract. You can't do it every month, up and down. And a final question, which is an aside, when is the hazmat going to be in collection for the township?
I believe it's in April, end of April. I have the date, I will
Check with
review
your
that.
office.
We'll get it out there on Facebook and we'll blast it out.
Saturday, June 8th,
Oh, okay.
over at Coles, I believe.
When is it?
June 8th.
Saturday, June 8th.
June, I beg your pardon, it's
Yeah.
a little bit later.
I
this
had
year, okay.
worked with, I think, Mr. Lilly
Yes.
and,
Mr. Lilly?
and Trish.
You have any questions, or?
Just before Don leaves, I know several times I've called on Don for projects to do and dumpsters that needed to be placed, and I want to thank you, sir, for your service that you provide to us.
Welcome.
I sat on the committee when Rizzo first came in here and talk about committees. That'd probably be the last one I want to sit on, but it was a difficult process, and I know you probably inherited a little bit of that backlash, but again, after that was all over with, I want to thank you, and I think, Rick, we talked a little bit today that we need to sit down with GFL and
We want to have some more
have some
conversation.
serious discussion.
Yeah, I agree.
We love being up here with you folks. And as soon as you can get a recycling committee together, Mary Jo and I will be glad to come out whenever you
Yeah,
need.
we're definitely going to take a look at that, because I think there's something that can be learned through the public in general, and absolutely excellent point. People are well-intended, but they may have forgotten just what's on that literature. You know, we're going to have some conversation about that. Was any other questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned cardboard being something that has a market. What are the other categories and how do they rank? And glass, I suppose, would
Well, so.
maybe be at the bottom.
So bottom line is, the material that comes into the plant, fiber goes this way, and fiber is newspaper, corrugated, junk mail, and catalogs and magazines, okay? So that is one commodity, and fiber is always good, because it goes into a lot of cycles. Then, from there, the other side of the plant has all the tin cans, and, your UBCs, they call them beverages that don't have you don't have to pay a deposit on. So that's a valuable commodity, it's aluminum. And then you have your water bottles everybody's got, those are PET, those go back right back into PET. So that's a number one. And number two is your milk jugs, natural they call it, HDPE. And then your laundry detergent, which is the colored stuff, colored ones. Those, I promise you, all get recycled, and they go to Dundee, Michigan, to Clean Tech. It's one of the major suppliers to Tide, all of the laundry, dish detergent. They're all go back into that cycle. It's same thing with water bottles. We're very good at Michigan about recycling our water bottles. So those and tin cans, okay? So tin is another commodity that gets separated out. But other than that, that's how how a plant runs, So
And prices just run with the market.
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Rick, I have a
Steel.
question.
Yes, Mr. Ruggles.
So I'm looking at your numbers here, and the $1.28, that pretty much just represents your perceived losses that you're facing
Exactly.
going forward.
Just to get us to zero.
So in 2017, 1 ton of garbage was worth $13.62. In 19, it will be a negative $86 per ton, is what I'm seeing here on your figures. That's a big swing.
Yes, $86, yes.
That's a huge swing there. So
So that's what we're incurring, 86 per ton.
per ton.
Per ton. And I believe your community generates 1,500 tons a year.
That's what it
Or a
says.
little over
1510.
115 a month.
Okay. Yeah, that's huge.
So that's the thing, we just, and we understand your position.
At what
We
point
really
in-
do. We're trying to be a partner in this.
At what point in time does the change happen? You're currently recycling. When will it stop? I mean, when do we make a decision?
Oh, good point. Yeah, we would like a decision and
Well, it looks
the better.
like,
Stop the bleed, so to
it looks
speak.
like at some point you're just gonna go to burning, right?
No, we can't do that without your permission.
You're held to this. You're held to recycle, as far as the contract says.
Well,
For-
we have had other communities,
For right now, yes.
they say we're gonna end recycling. So some communities say, you know what, it's not worth it to us, we don't have the money, one, and we're gonna pull it. We're gonna pull recycling, so you're think about this stuff. And I don't mean to sound, everything that you're putting in that bin is trash. Okay, it comes out of your kitchen, that's called municipal solid waste, or single stream. It's trash. And however, unfortunately, it's gotten so contaminated, it's trash. So 40% of your load right now is being trashed at the MRF because it's glass, and the rest is your whatever, the 4% is residual.
Mhm.
Residual means it's when it goes through the whole plant. At the end of the plant, it's going into an open top and it's going to the landfill.
Mhm.
It cannot be recycled. We get diapers, we get garden hoses, we get
Hangers.
shredded paper.
Diapers.
Shredded paper can't get caught. It doesn't get captured.
Clothes.
Clothes, shoes.
Clothes mess up the line.
Well, here again, we go back to the education process, which I think is
Right,
really.
and it's my understanding, like, if you're trying to recycle a pizza box and you just leave one mushroom in it, it's contaminated.
Exactly.
It's that
Well,
particular.
it's more the grease, because if
Yeah.
you take the liner out and the corrugated box is clean,
If you cut the top off and put the
Yeah.
top in your recycling container, you're safe. The bottom should go in the
So
trash.
people are well intended and they're trying to recycle,
Yeah.
but it's ending up in the trash because it's contaminated.
we're
So
getting red Solo cups, okay, they're not recyclable.
Styro-
Neither are your your Starbucks cups, even though they're made out of paper, they're not recyclable.
Tim Hortons?
right.
Nope, no Tim either.
I'm personally pleased with your garbage service. I want you to know that as a resident.
you.
I'm personally pleased with your garbage service. I think you guys are great. My garbage man's so friendly.
Well, we
But
tried.
the one thing I would just like you to clarify for our residents' benefit was on Facebook, which not everybody is on Facebook, is there was a lot of neighbors that contacted me about plastic bags. So if you could just give a quick overview on recycling plastic bags for our residents.
Nobody wants.
No plastic bags,
Nobody
correct?
wants plastic bags. If you can find a retailer that takes them from you, fine, but the MRFs do not want them.
So what happened was, that's again, China. When we opened the MRF, and I worked there, and I procured the material into the plant, and I know it. We used to have a vacuum that, when the first of it comes in on a conveyor system, all commingled. The first thing the guys on the line would grab would be those plastic bags, and they'd stick them in a vacuum, and it got baled in little tiny bales, and we shipped them to China. China was taking them and making it into, it's LDPE, it's a certain type of plastic. Well, guess what? That got cut off. And so what does that do? We have too much of it, and so here's what's going to happen. Have you been to Aldi's? Guess what? You bring your own bags, and that's going to be a change in our culture. It's like recycling 20 years ago. No one recycled, and it took time for us. It's a way of living. Same thing. Our way of living is going to change back to the old days. Brown paper bags, because those are recyclable. You're going to bring your own bags. You know what I'm saying? So it's all a process, and we all are evolving. Trying to do the right thing for our world and
I agree.
our children and,
I
our
think we're
grandchildren.
trying to do the right thing by our residents
Right.
as well, and a huge part of it is education. But at the same time, we have to be fiscally responsible, and we're not okay with spending $150,000 that we didn't expect. So if that can be postponed until our renegotiation.
Well, we are going to have some conversation here very shortly. So
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to thank you for coming tonight.
Thank
Oh, one last question from Mr. Roman.
So guys, if I'm understanding your process right, these bins with all of our recyclable stuff go to your plant somewhere, where some ends up in the garbage.
So it goes to not our plant,
Yeah.
Republic's
Someone else.
plant.
Republic's plant.
And there's two of them.
There's-
Where
there-
does their stuff go to? The one on Evergreen?
The stuff that is generated out of White Lake goes to the Ross Sock MRF, which is on an 8 Mile in Evergreen. The only other facility is down on North Huron Road off of 275.
In New Boston.
And that's a little bit too far.
And now, so you're originally, your contract with Republic, it states it in your contract. It says it went to Roseville.
Roseville.
Guess what? That's closed.
That's
That
been
plant
closed for a long time.
So when you give that, all that recyclable stuff to them, do you pay them to get rid of it, or do they pay you for the
No,
material?
we pay them dearly,
Pay them,
to the tune
okay.
of about $5 million a year.
Okay, now with the stuff that they can actually recycle, do they have to pay someone to do it, or do they get paid?
So, if you look at the spreadsheet, they are giving us a credit. So they're charging us $120 per ton to put your material through the plant. So 120 is our cost. Then they give at the output, input, output in a plant, the output of fiber, tin, all the good stuff that I just mentioned, plastic, has a value. And guess what it is? It's like $30. So they take that $30 and they take it off of the 120 or $40, close to 40, whatever. And it's now at 8. What your number?
33.67. So then you get the 86.33.
So that's what we're getting charged per ton. But we're,
Right, but
we're happy to pay, believe me. We understand your position, and we just want you to know that, right, Don? We just.
Yeah, I mean,
we've
as
been
a-
doing this for. I've been doing this 30 years. I've been on the recycling side.
As a company,
And he's 40. So
yeah.
you're talking to people that really know what we're doing.
Okay, I'll just beat to the bush. So my question for you guys, is there a watchdog out there that really makes sure what we think is being recycled gets recycled? I mean, how do you know it gets how do you know it doesn't all end up at the Detroit
No, we
incinerator?
don't. Because we're bringing it to them.
Yeah, but how do you know?
No,
Is there a
because they're getting
watchdog that
reimbursed-
watches them?
They're getting reimbursed for that. So the cost of disposal is credited by the cost of the recycled good. So there'd be no advantage for them not to take it someplace to get some return on it.
There is no one else can process it. See, we have no other
Yeah,
alternative.
we're
You lost me.
anybody that hauls
That's
trash
okay.
in this area is locked into two facilities. We'd be glad to set up
We wish we had our own MRF.
a
Let's
site
just put it
visit
that way.
for anybody that wants to go there and see
Yes.
what the process is.
I will give you the
At
tour.
some point,
I'll take you up on that.
we're
Oh,
gonna
that's
go-
fine.
No, seriously,
Okay.
I will take all
All right,
of you.
all right,
We'll
so-
go on a field trip.
All right, we're good. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And again, I like everybody just kind of weigh in just to see what the thought processes are, and we're gonna
I'm
have
very
some.
interested in hearing
Yeah,
from
we're
residents.
gonna watch this and see where it
Thank you.
happens.
Good night.
Thanks,
We will
guys.
be talking to you very soon. Thank you very much. With that, I'm gonna move along to trustee comments. Ms. Smith, I'm gonna start with you.
Sure. So I'll be pretty brief. We're getting it out early this evening. The library board meeting has been moved to tomorrow at 6:45 instead of the 27th of February. Last month I mentioned that I would have the opportunity to do a walkthrough in the new library. It was fabulous. It was really exciting to see it. It's clipping right along. It's busy bees in there. Every corner is being worked on. There's tons of crews. So it's really exciting. The library is putting pictures along the way on their Facebook. So if anyone's interested to see the progress, follow along on their Facebook. And Supervisor Cole and I attended the State of the County this month, and it was very informative. It's very wonderful. I felt proud to be part of such a booming county, and White Lake is right in there with that. And so that was wonderful. Several of us also had the opportunity to attend the retirement party of Larry Sheldon. I know we mentioned that a little bit last month, but I don't think we had the party yet. And so I just want to announce his retirement and his farewell, but best wishes to him in his next chapter as he's going to be chief in another township. And then, of course, I want to wish Chief Keller happy birthday. And that's it.
Okay. Mr. Roman.
Just for those residents that still owe property taxes, they can be paid at the township through the end of February. After that, they have to be paid at Oakland County. That's all I had, Rick.
That's good.
I forgot one thing. It's really quick. So this evening I wanted to make sure that I wore red to bring awareness to Go Red for Women's Heart Health. So just as a reminder to all women out there, make sure you get your heart checkups.
Thank you. Mr. Ruggles?
I don't really have anything to add, except for, Chief, happy birthday. How old are you?
35, 45.
29 forever.
Mr. Lilly?
I'm good, Rick.
You're good?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Just for those of you who may not know, this is Mike Holmeyer. He is our stand-in attorney for Lisa Hamami. And some of you who may not know, Lisa had surgery. She had a brain tumor. I'm very pleased to say she's doing quite well. She's on the road to recovery. I spoke to her the other day. She sounded just like her chipper self, but I'd like all of you to keep her in your thoughts and prayers, and for a speedy recovery to come back here, because she's prettier than him. So, but, and that's a real important thing to me, that she gets back here, and I think everybody else shares that adage, and so I want to put that out there.
No offense taken, Mike,
Yeah,
please.
no,
No offense
we
intended.
appreciate
Trust me,
you
I've heard it
before. Dan, happy birthday again. And, you know, we always learn something here at every meeting. Sometimes we learn things that we, you know, look at and go, maybe that's not so important. Other things we look at and we take more to heart. And other times when we think we know what we're doing, or we're doing what we perceive as the right thing, we suddenly find out that we're not, okay? A case in point tonight. So I guess we're going to take a look at this recycling thing and kind of see where it all goes, and we'll have some further conversations with GFL, but I'd really like to hear from the public, a little weigh-in on it, and see what their thought processes are. So with that, I say good night, God bless, take care, everyone. And looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion support. I have support by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.